Hey, good morning. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on the Supply Chain Now, the Supply Chain Buzz on Supply Chain Now.
There
Welcome
you
to
go.
today's live stream. Greg,
Happy Buzz Day.
thank you very much. Are you buzzed for Buzz Day?
It's also my brother's birthday. So happy birthday to my brother Mitch. Um,
Happy birthday, Mitch.
yeah.
That is outstanding.
Yeah.
27, right?
So, there's the first news of the day.
Well, happy birthday, Mitch. Where does Mitch live, Greg?
Indianapolis. So,
Indianapolis.
yeah, works for Eli Lilly there.
Okay. Home
So,
of St. Elmo's Steakhouse, I believe, in Indianapolis. Ever been there?
no. I've only been to Indy maybe once or twice,
Okay.
and both times kind of in and out for business. So
Well,
maybe I've been there, but I think I would remember it, right?
well, just like my intro, I might be butchering the restaurant name a little bit. I think it's St.
That sounds
Elmo's.
familiar.
They're well known. They've got some really spicy shrimp cocktail, like extra horseradish in the cocktail sauce, and
So
all the
you've
food's
been
great.
there.
Yeah, I have. It
Oh,
is
that's awesome.
delicious. But Greg, today, so happy birthday, Mitch, in the beautiful city of Indianapolis, wherever you are. Today, though,
Right?
it is all about the supply chain buzz here on Supply Chain Now, where we share some of the leading stories across global business. And Greg, we have got one of our favorites joining us. It's been about 2 years since she joined us last time, right?
Yeah, she said that in the green room. I cannot believe it has been that long, right? Not
It's
not quite 2 years, but coming up on it,
close, right?
right?
Sneaking up on it. Sylvia Judy, who is not only a supply chain dynamo, but the esteemed informal ambassador of the Charleston, South Carolina supply chain ecosystem.
And
That's
homemade jams. Don't forget that,
That's right.
right?
Heavyweight champion of the world when it comes to homemade jam. So, folks, if you tuned
I'd
in,
put her more at a welterweight, but
okay,
yeah.
that's a good point. That's a good point, Greg. But folks, if you've tuned in any of our live streams, occasionally you'll see Sylvia Judy tune in and chime in from the cheap seats or the skyboxes, you name it. She
Yeah.
hails from Charleston, and I love her passion and all that she does in global supply chain and trade. So, hey, but beyond Sylvia, Greg and I are going to be talking about a variety of topics and initiatives today. And buckle up and get ready because we want to hear from you too. So, weigh in. We're going to say hello to a few folks here momentarily, but would love to hear your take on the stories we talk about today. Is that
Yeah.
right, Greg?
Yes, we would like to hear that. Yes. Actually, hold on. I need to get to the comments here.
So, in the meantime, though, we'll share.
Depending on what you have to say, we'd like
That's
to
right.
hear
Depending on what you got to say. But hey, in the meantime, I want to share 3 events where we welcome your participation. The first is tomorrow. It's the latest working session for the Leveraging Logistics for Ukraine. Folks, if you're in a position to donate your efforts or your bandwidth or resources, or if you're not, that's perfectly fine. But every I think once a month now they get together to have these working sessions to vet the needs that come in, needs in Poland, Ukraine, and
Yeah.
elsewhere, and then find resources and the conveyance to get containers across the pond. I think, Greg, from outcomes perspective, I think already 10 containers are have or are on their way to folks
Yeah.
in need. So it's all about
Yeah.
results, right?
Yeah, and amazing, relatively informal effort led by our friends at Vector, Enrique Alvarez and Maureen, and the rest of the team making it happen there. And then working with Gregorz in Poland. What's his last
Yes.
name? I forgot.
Oh gosh, you didn't tell me
I
there's
know
going to
his
be a
name
quiz.
translates to Greg in English, so that's the part I can remember.
Well, folks, join us for the sessions tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Would love
Yeah.
to have you join. I'm going to hit 2 more quick events. In the meantime, folks, lots of folks tuning in here today. Let us know if you would. Let us know what part of the world that you're tuned in from. So we're gonna go through and say hello to everyone in just a moment. But first, 3 ways to stay afloat through the supply chain crisis. A distributor story. This should be an intriguing webinar coming to us August 2nd at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, a little special time, 30 minutes earlier, in partnership with our friends at Enable. Greg, a distributor story. It might be a little different take than what folks are expecting, huh?
It is, and I'll without being a spoiler, I'll tell you that it is a particularly difficult environment for distributors because of every layer of the supply chain. Distributors have the smallest margins. Some companies only make money by forward buying their inventory, which, as we can imagine, is a pretty good sized risk, especially in these days. But a distributor's margins are usually in the somewhere around zero, sometimes even below zero, and 3% range in terms of net margins. So they do a lot of work, take a lot of risk, provide a lot of volume. So yeah, I think this will be really interesting. I've worked a lot with distributors over my career, and they are the, whatever you want to call it, they are the knuckle busters of the supply chain industry, no doubt.
Well, y'all join us August 2nd, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. You got to register for this one, for both this webinar on August 2nd, as well as this next webinar on August 10th. We've got James Malley, Greg, coming back, making a on-demand repeat appearance here.
Oh, it's love having James on the show. Yeah.
he
First
really
of all, what
is.
they do is super cool, right? But
right.
He's just a really cool cucumber, that's for sure.
Completely agree. Now, he's going to be joined by a colleague, Rick Jones, also with Packard, and he's also going to be joined by Will Brown with Stored, who's been making a big splash across the industry for a couple of years now. But join us on August 10th at 12 noon Eastern time for sustainability and profitability, the ripple effect of shipping less air. That's a good thing. You got to register for this one or the August 2nd one, but you can find the link in the comments, and we'd love to have y'all join us for those shows. Okay, so Gregory, are we ready to? I got a special guest here. Mitch is joining us. Your brother Mitch. No, I'm just kidding, Greg.
You're kidding.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
It would be cool, but he should be working right now.
I bet your ears perked up a bit when you thought I was going to bring on Mitch. All right,
I'm not even sure he knows that I do this. We just vaguely even get into what we do for a living, right? Mostly we entertain. Let's call it that.
That's a nice label. It's a nice label.
Right.
Entertaining. Well, hello, Usman. Tuned in via LinkedIn. Great to have you here. Let us know where you're tuned in from. Catherine, of course. Happy Buzz Day, everyone. Catherine, Chantel, and Amanda behind the scenes helping make production happen today. Big thanks for what they do. Kenchan from India via LinkedIn is here. Welcome. Looking forward to hearing your take here today. Let's see here. Lakeshwar.
Yeah, okay, you're probably closer. Closer. Okay.
Well, let us know which one. We want to get everyone's names right. Of course, it's really important. I've been known to get my 3 kids' names wrong from time to time still after, 13 years.
Your own last name, occasionally.
Occasionally, that's right. Greg will never let me live down the time I signed off by saying I'm Scott Luton. Yes, Luton with a G.
In his defense, folks, it had been a really long day.
That's true.
Really long day. Like eight interviews or something like that, right?
Yeah.
At RLA in Vegas. That was right before the world melted down. That was right. Yeah.
You're right, man.
Right after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, which my wife still says is what caused all of this.
Well, what a great trip that was. And also, how great is it to have Shelly Phillips back with us from Colorado via LinkedIn. Great to see you again, Shelly. Evans Dispatching Logistics from Waco, Texas. I can't remember your name. I apologize. Let us know. But welcome back. Great to have you as part of these live streams as always. Monica from Seattle. Hello to Monica via LinkedIn. Great to see you here today.
By way of Poland, I think she posts later.
Okay.
I'm
behind then.
Born and raised in Poland. Yep.
Okay, Monica. I bet
she might have some contacts for Enrique to get some goods over there. You never know, right?
That's right. You never know. Never close any door. Joey, great to see you here. Making me hungry. It's all about LinkedIn. So, Greg, I think we're talking about St. Elmo's Steakhouse, and do you like a good shrimp cocktail, Greg?
Of course. Yes, I love shrimp.
It's I've gotta have that extra horseradish in the cocktail sauce. Don't give me ketchup stuff. It's gotta be
Yep.
extra spicy where it opens them
That's the point,
sinuses.
isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah. Otherwise, it is just ketchup,
that's
really.
right. Jose is back with us from Southern California. Jose, I hope this finds you well. I know you've been staying busy. Love
Yeah,
your
he made a
content.
tour out east
That's right.
recently, right?
That is right. And he's with us in spirit here, out east here today on the buzz. So welcome, Jose. Uh, Dita is here via LinkedIn. Happy Monday, everybody. Let us know, Dita, where you are tuned in from. Bryce Taylor, happy Monday from Fort
Fort
Wayne,
Wayne.
Indiana.
Ah,
Do you know anything about Fort Wayne, Indiana, Greg?
I know that almost everyone there is a Notre Dame fan. That's about all I
Okay.
know.
Okay. Well, Bryce, correct me if I'm wrong. But be kind about it, please. But I believe Fort Wayne,
Also
the
about
very
Notre Dame.
first, the very first video game home console was developed by Magnavox in Fort Wayne, Indiana, amongst other things. It's a very innovative part of the country.
Pong.
So, it was. I can't remember the name of the Magnavox console, but it was around that time. Yeah, Pong is a great time reference there, Greg.
Yeah.
Bryce, great to have you here with us today. Gene Pledger from North Alabama is back with us via LinkedIn. How you doing, GP? Good to see you. Let's see here. Josh Goody, Greg, is giving the weather report. 70 degrees and sunny here in Seattle. Great to have you back, Josh.
Best place on the planet to be right now, if it's 70 and sunny in Seattle. The greenest place on earth, I would say.
Amen.
Because when it's not raining and it's sunny, you can see everything that's been growing for the last 6 months.
Yasser is here from Savannah, one of our favorite cities, via LinkedIn.
We're surrounded.
We
Charleston
sure
and Savannah and Hilton Head, we got it covered. We've
got
covered the coast, Scott.
Coast to coast. But Yasser, great to have you here. Looking forward to hearing your perspective. And then finally, Joey is tuned in. He's hungry, but he's tuned in from sunny Minnesota, at least for a few more months, he says, representing SPS Commerce. Great to see you here, Joey.
Commerce, yeah. Big VAR, huge VAR. I mean, they're much broader than that now, but a lot of these companies started out as EDI VARs, or that was a big part of their business. Big company.
So, Joey, I'm going to ask you one question. Your favorite place to eat in Minnesota, since you've got us going down the food channel. Let us know your favorite place.
And we got to know what town he's in. We got to know where he is too.
Good point.
Right?
Good point.
Yeah,
we're going to make reservations and we'll meet you there tonight. Okay, Joey, great to have you here. All right, so Greg, are you ready to dive into our first story here today?
Yeah, let's take a look at it.
Let's see. So we're going to be talking reshoring, onshoring, nearshoring, all kinds of shoring, right? It's clearly on the mind and the lips of CEOs, more so now than in recent memory. But Greg, according to Bloomberg, it ain't all talk. Check out this number. There's been about a 10% increase in overall building construction over the last year, right? For all types of buildings and sites, right? 10%. But there's been 116% increase in manufacturing site construction here in the U.S. in that same time frame. So what does that activity look like? Well, some of it we talked about quite a bit already, right? We got 3 massive semiconductor factories. I think they call those foundries too, in and around Phoenix, right? You've got new aluminum and steel plants being built in Alabama, Arkansas, and Kentucky. And all of this construction is increasing demand for air compressors, Greg, amongst other things. So leading Ingersoll Rand, really big global company, to reopen an old plant near Buffalo, New York to crank out new air compressors. And that's just a little tasting of what that 116% increase, what that looks like. Greg, your take on onshoring, nearshoring, reshoring, and then more.
Well, I think, not to put a damper on it, but I don't think we've built a lot of manufacturing facilities here in the States in the recent past. So 116, basically just over doubling the rate that we had before. I'd love to know what that number is, right? Not just the percentage. But I do think we're starting to see that, and we're seeing a lot of talk about it and and in some cases a lot of action. The thing we have to recognize is that we all get excited because we think about it like our parents or grandparents did. It's bringing jobs back to America. The truth is, it's probably not bringing that many jobs, because I also saw on Bloomberg celebration of reshoring, and the thesis of the entire discussion was that means more automation. Right, because the labor here is significantly more expensive than virtually anywhere else things are being manufactured for U.S. consumption. But I don't think that's a bad thing. Look, nobody wants manufacturing jobs. We've talked about this over and over again, that people are staying away in droves from manufacturing because of the 3Ds, dark, dirty, dangerous. And someone recently added another D, dull. Right. I think people think of the job that way. It isn't always, but people think of the job that way. Right. But look, if we can bring that back, it simplifies the supply chain. It creates greater safety and stability in the supply chain. I wish I could think of another S, maybe sustainability, maybe even sustainability in the supply chain, because we cease to do business with 5, 6, 7 tiers of suppliers, hopefully, and gain greater control over both the operations and the trade methodologies of it. Hopefully bring some higher ethics into supply chain as well. But we have to understand that that's going to be a very, very limited number of industries, because if it requires labor at all, we just can't compete. Right? We can't compete with people who make $10,000 a year or less to do jobs that Americans want, who knows what, $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year to do.
Right. Well said. But nevertheless, some expansion, and I think it'd be cool to see real numbers there to have a better context. So we'll dive into Bloomberg and see what else is there. But it's really interesting to see. It's not all talk. I think the equation, the value proposition for acting on what folks have been talking about since the pandemic started, right, and it dawned on the world where we are, and it was going to be more than just a little blip. Right. And then I think when you factor in beyond the pandemic, from ports to getting close to your consumers to having reliable access to energy, which is a big consideration when you're looking at new sites for plants and whatnot. It'll be interesting to see just how far this movement goes.
I think it's great that we're doing this. We don't want to get what is that old term? Inappropriately enthusiastic or whatever that is, right?
Out in front of our skis, maybe. I don't know.
But now we will have many, many more examples of the trade-offs between offshoring and near right-shoring, whatever you want to call it. And we've been having tons of discussions around this, and there are some companies and some industries very dedicated to doing it, and some of them with good reason, because the risk of continuing to be offshore or source offshore is significant. So
that's right.
What the truth of that may be that it produces everlasting inflation for some products, or it could be a relative blip. I don't mean a year, but it could be 3, 5, 10, and then the economics change again. So it's a good indicator. I think it's a great opportunity for us to do some real life analysis of the practicalities of it, and then maybe figure out how we support it. Of course, there's a bill in Congress right now for something like $52 billion to help support onshoring, reshoring semiconductor production. So because we clearly cannot do that. So all of us will have to pay, whether we buy semiconductors or not, we'll have to pay to have them built. Right. That will come out of our tax dollars.
Well,
You're welcome.
It's also interesting, the Phoenix, in and around the Phoenix, because the huge water component that these semiconductor facilities they require. It's going to be interesting. How's that balanced, especially in the western half of the country in the years to come? But hey, we're going to keep our finger on the pulse. There's so much here. There's so much to it. But I think the inarguable component of all of this, Greg, is the first point you made, that it takes for it to be onshored, for it to be here in the U.S. It's got to be a big technology automation play, because the labor market is very challenging here for sure. Okay. Um, moving right along, Joey, ask and you shall receive. Joey says,
Oh boy.
Quang's in Minneapolis, which is a hole in the wall Vietnamese restaurant, was on Diners, Drive-In, and Dives. How about that? Who's got to host that?
Guy Fieri.
Yes, Guy Fieri. Joey, we're going to check it out.
Yeah, because we are both huge Vietnamese food fans, right?
That's true.
Scott is a mother pho lover. And and I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, which people will probably drop dead when I say this, has a huge Vietnamese population. So every day except Monday, because I don't eat that nasty soup with eyeballs and guts in it. But man, I loved it. And of course, my great grandfather lived in a portion of the town that was largely Latin and Vietnamese. So I mean,
Greg,
you want to talk about food mecca, Mexican food next to Vietnamese food, right? Get it all done at once.
Well, so Greg, I might surprise you. I don't know if I've shared this with you. You mentioned Wichita. Of course, I was there with the Air Force for 2 years.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
The first place I ever had pho was in Wichita. I was introduced to it by my Air Force colleagues.
Wow.
I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but ever since then, me and Amanda, we love it. We don't eat it as much as we'd like. There's some great places throughout Metro Atlanta to get it. Buford Highway and plenty of other places. So we're going to take you up on that, Joey, and check out Quang's. Okay.
Dang, I did not know that you got introduced.
First place ever.
Wow, that's crazy.
Strange.
Yeah.
Sheldon says, and I think he's probably speaking around our first story there. I think it moves the supply chain pull boundaries for these firms in terms of market response and improved demand latency. But these plants are still going to be beholden to raw material suppliers that are still from many parts of these undesirable areas. Greg.
An excellent point. Yeah, that's an excellent point. There's a lot of things we can get into there. I didn't get into, but I'm glad Sheldon did, because that's an important thing. Scott, we've had this discussion many times. What does made in America even mean these days? Sometimes It's just assembled in America, right? Even American cars have, literally thousands of suppliers, and many of them from outside of North America.
Well, I think a great comparison, the Made in USA stickers, the recyclable 3-arrow thing. It's amazing how much leeway marketing pros have when it comes to adding that stuff to product packaging. It really is. The recycling thing alone, I've seen some fascinating documentaries about just how much leeway and how much things that aren't practically recyclable have that, so consumers feel better about purchasing, making certain purchasing decisions. But we'll save that for another show, Greg. I want to get into one more article here before we bring in our special guest, the one and only Sylvia Judy. And let's see here. I'll tee this up here, because Greg, your supply chain commentaries on LinkedIn Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you are setting the world on fire as expected. This is one you published, I believe it was Friday, 6 criteria for picking a new supplier based on an article that was published in Supply Chain Dive. So, hey, tell us, give us your take here.
So this is a really good article. It's really very specific. And, it talks about some very specific, 6 very specific tactics that you can take. What it made me think of as I read it was, I think we can pull up a level and think about the categories of those specific actions fall into, because they're predominantly about 4 what I call pillars of supply chain. That's cost, of course, but the impetus of this article was, don't just focus on cost. You can't just focus on cost. If anyone has ever or never heard me say that, you've probably never heard me say anything, because this is my mantra, right? Supply chain has too long been a cost saving initiative, and it needs to be a risk balancing initiative. And that was actually the approach that the article took. I just took it up a level and said, hey, aside from cost, we need to consider reliability and ethics, right? We were just talking about ethics, and we need to talk about speed as well, right? Think about how many companies are behind the 8 ball or wanting to hit an 8 ball because they their lead times are so long, and they missed a season. Target is a great example. By the way, if you're looking for patio furniture on sale, Target, Kohl's, and Walmart are all having big sales on patio furniture because they missed the level of demand,
Right.
the shift of demand by consumers. But I think what you have to think about in this day and age when selecting a supplier is the broad spectrum of risks that you can have with a supplier. And you need to solve for all of those things, because ultimately, when you have a supplier base, whoever uses those suppliers and produces or distributes or sells those goods, you are the one who is responsible for representing those to your customers or consumers in the marketplace. And you will be held accountable for actions that your suppliers take or failures that your suppliers have. I just think, as I went through this, I thought,
Yep.
companies need to, and now have a greater ability to take control, they're going to take accountability whether they want it or not. They need to take control of these aspects of their supply chain aside from cost, and start to build resiliency or reduce fragility or eliminate risk, however you want to say it, in all of those other areas of their supply chain and procurement.
Right. So we've been talking about Greg's supply chain commentary on this Supply Chain Dive article, 6 criteria for picking a new supplier. Folks, we've dropped the link to Greg's commentary. We'd love for you. There's some great comments. We'd love for you to weigh in. Let Greg know what you're thinking about this list. I would just add, Greg, beyond, so cost was kind of a given, right? In the premise of this article, I think proximity, it should also be a given, right? But beyond that, the portfolio mix. I've done a little bit of work with what I'll call the world's leading chicken sandwich provider. We'll couch it like that. And one of their big MOs is they didn't want any of their suppliers too heavily weighted in their business with that same company, right? So that so that if one customer goes away, the whole house of cards doesn't fall in. They want that stability, I think you referenced. So what's that portfolio mix look like? I think that's a really important thing beyond what you've shared and the 6 things in the article. That portfolio mix can be an important thing that really speaks to the reliability and the longevity of your suppliers you're considering.
You got to know your risks, you got to know your fragilities, and you've got to either eliminate or mitigate them. Right. And there are all kinds of ways to do that. Don't single thread to the point that you're making. In fact, I worked with the distributor who was the distributor to that major
chicken sandwich maker
retailer. And they got divested of about 50% of their business because they wanted to bring in another distributor. And then it got diluted yet again because they brought in a much smaller one. So they had 2 vendors that had 40% of their business, and then another that had 20-ish. And that, I think that's a great example. And there are all kinds of those things as well. You have to filter or adapt to the other risks in your supply chain. And again, you have to think of something. This is the primary theme here. You have to think of something besides cost,
right,
as risks that are worth managing toward. Right.
Well
said. Reliability, and ethics, I think, are the 3 that come immediately to mind.
Love that and agree. All right. So T Squared is with us. T Squared, great to have you here. Sounds like agile and responsive supply chains are trying to collide, which would be a major plus. Now, look, he is still waiting on that trivia prize. Now, I know Amanda.
I know it got stolen in the mail. I'm sure it got stolen in the mail, Tyrone.
So here, this is what I want to do. The next 30 minutes, let's solve this little challenge. So T Squared, I know Catherine, I believe it was Catherine, had reached out via YouTube. We want to get that prize in your hands for you answering.
Do we have to solve it, or can we just say supply chain issues?
Yeah, that's right, Greg. So T Squared, let's get you connected with Amanda, Catherine, and let's solve that today if we can. But great to have you here, and we're going to get that fixed. Okay, so with no further ado, Greg.
We've had a lot to do.
We have a lot to do, don't we? Well, I want to, we are excited to have one of our favorites, one of our long-time friends, a fellow passionista when it comes to all things global supply chain like we are. So I want to welcome in Sylvia Judy, a member of JAS Forwarding and president of the Customs Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association of Charleston, South Carolina, to the conversation. Sylvia.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
That is right.
Or as I coined the phrase, moin y'all, because it represents both of my home ports, which is Hamburg, Germany, and of course, Charleston, South Carolina. So thank you again, Scott and Greg. It's great to be back. It's been almost 2 years, as you said earlier. And I hate that I keep missing y'all during lunchtime, but we have a lot of team calls during that time frame. So it's just an honor to be back. So thank you for having me. And Greg, here's your blueberry jam.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I'll save you the delivery charge and I'll come get it. How's that?
Well, you're practically a neighbor now. You're probably 40 miles as the crow flies now. So
yeah. Right,
man. We're gonna have to get that fixed. Okay, before we dive in with Sylvia, okay, talking about getting things fixed. T Squared, send us a note to Catherine at supplychainnow.com. We're gonna get that fixed. Great to have you here in the audience. David, great to have you back via LinkedIn. Let us know where you're tuned in from. And finally, Greg, it's been a long time. Greg, welcome back. He's sharing an article from Business Insider on some of the companies that are bringing manufacturing back. So thank you for that, Greg. We all love manufacturing. I'm a big manufacturing nerd myself. Okay, so Greg, the first place we want to start with Sylvia, right? We one of your many nicknames, Sylvia, is you're an esteemed ambassador, informally, but still the esteemed ambassador for the wonderful supply chain ecosystem of Charleston, South Carolina. So if you can, give us a quick update on what's going on, not just across that ecosystem, but also including, of course, the big juggernaut, the ports of Charleston.
Thank you very much, Scott. Yes, I don't know if I'm an ambassador. I try to be. I try to represent both my home ports in the best of my ability. But Charleston, of course, is very near and dear to my heart. As I shared with you previously, I moved to Charleston a week before Hurricane Hugo blew through here in September 21st, 1989. So everybody keeps blaming me for it. I don't know, but I say I took the city by a storm. Nonetheless, I made and Scott, I don't know, you probably were stationed at the Air Force at one particular point here in Charleston, because we do have a large Air Force base here. And, we also have, because of the Air Force, our runway actually can land a 747 with no problem. I think it's 3,600 meters. I don't know. Don't quote me on it because I don't know for sure. But anyway, so we can handle the big birds too, which, even though we're in the port of Charleston, but air freight is a very critical component in the South Carolina market. And with that being said, Port of Charleston, yes, you're absolutely right. We had a huge milestone. And that is basically changing of the leadership or continuation of the great leadership. Jim Newsom retired, and Barbara Melvin is now the president and CEO of the South Carolina State Ports Authority, which makes her the first female leading a top 10 U.S. port.
Wow.
So this is really something, I'm really big on trailblazers, and Barbara for sure is a trailblazer in our industry and in the global supply chain world, and a fantastic keynote speaker on top of it. So I'm very proud and very humbled to be associated with the Port of Charleston, and particularly through the Customs Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association here in Charleston, which I was honored to be selected or elected the president for the year 2022. And as you know, we've had these conversations before. The pandemic has taught us one thing, and that is resilience.
Right.
And then the second thing it taught us is agility. And with that being said, the Port of Charleston has moved forward and has had record-setting year-over-year results on full container business and on the financial impact. But just a couple of
So Sylvia, really quick, if I can interject just for a minute, going back to Greg, Barbara Melvin, and if I heard that factoid right, Sylvia, first female leader of a top 10 port in across the country. That is, Greg, that's a big piece of news.
Yeah, well, in Charleston, I mean, is inarguably one of the best operated ports in the nation, right? I mean, they got a lot of whatever you want to call it, a lot of demand placed on them because of the inadequacies of the ports on the West Coast and, of course, in the Northeast. And they have handled that in stellar fashion. And, you know, they had their own backup at one point, but never to the extent that any of the other ports had. And they have completely cleared that. And, you know, we can verify that, Scott, because we keep track of the ports on our little friend here. So, I mean, we can literally look and see that they are doing a great job. There are 3 ships anchored offshore from the port of Charleston right now. So,
Man.
Actually, as of 8:30 this morning, it was 0 vessels on anchorage.
Wow.
Well, these might be new arrivals. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they are just
this one is
up.
just landed a minute ago, 3 minutes ago. Yeah. So they're probably just some ones that have just recently landed. Right.
Well, really quick, Sylvia, and then I know you're going to continue and share a few more updates, but you referenced the Air Force there in Charleston. I think that's the leading base for the C-17 and all the global transport work that Charleston Air Force Base does. So, and the C-17, I think C-5 is still bigger than the C-17, but I think C-5's operated out of that same base. I'm not sure if they've replaced that fleet locally. But it can handle whatever I think the civilian side throws at it. So I'm glad you called that out as a proud Air Force nerd on my end. Okay. So
Scott, just
Greg,
a bit of trivia. So
yes.
Coming down the coast, this happened, I'm sure, in Charleston, Beaufort, Bluffton, and in Hilton Head. The F-16s and C-17s did a flyover on the 4th of July, as did the 18s from Camp Lejeune.
How about that?
You know, down the coast. So that was pretty cool. We had bunches of Marines out there on the beach waving flags and getting wingtips. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, I think there's little as we're all smiling and shaking our heads, a flyover. The flyovers are some of the best thing.
No kidding, man.
Before the Super Bowl, before big games. I mean, that really, if you want to get that crowd ready and know something big's coming, you put the F-16s and missing man formation roaring across the stadium. I mean, it's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So Sylvia and David, I see your question. We'll try to get to that in a moment. But Sylvia, please continue with kind of your update on what's going on in Charleston. If we have any geographically challenged folks, I'll raise my hand sometimes, but here, Charleston sits there between Savannah and Myrtle Beach. You'll see its proximity to Jacksonville, some of the, other ports up and down the eastern seaboard. But Sylvia, please continue.
Thank you, Scott. And Greg, I actually enjoyed that same flyover right here on John's Island, and it was absolutely spectacular. And I agree. Wonderful, wonderful way to show your patriotism. And it's just heart-touching to me. But just a couple of stats here. Tax revenue generated in South Carolina, $1.1 billion annually through the Port of Charleston.
Wow.
We've got an economic impact of $63.4 billion through the South Carolina port industry. 1 out of 10 jobs in South Carolina is associated with port-related industries. And as we know, the struggles have been quite severe for everyone in the supply chain, and especially when it comes to the logistical aspect of things. There's a multitude of factors that formed or really created the perfect storm for the entire industry. And part of the main issue was, of course, the backup on the West Coast ports, which, carriers again showed the flexibility to move everything to the eastern seaboard, which, of course, at first, and even in Jim Newsom's last chat and chew meeting that we had, luncheon, he said, we all just kind of got a little bit greedy and told everyone to come on, we can handle the business here in Charleston. Well, Savannah, of course, our friendly sister rival port, said same thing. And just a little bit of history on Jim Newsom. His father was actually the port director of the Port of Savannah.
Really?
So, yes. which I thought was really a little interesting tidbit because he is actually a Savannah gentleman. And when he told his father, I'm sure that was an interesting conversation that they had way back 13 years ago when he took on the post to become the president and CEO of the South Carolina State Sports Authority. But with that being said, we had all of a sudden everything that was, at the West Coast, Los Angeles, Long Beach, we had up to 137 vessels at any given point on Anchorage. So when they diverted through the Panama Canal coming to the eastern seaboard, there was no way that we were able to accommodate at any port, for that matter, that caused kind of like the trickle-down effect of having all these vessels on Anchorage moving from the West Coast to the East Coast. And ports that are still heavily affected are now still Savannah and even Norfolk to a lesser extent, and New York, New Jersey, of course, which is the largest ports authority on the East Coast. And with that being said, we had the new Hugh Leatherman terminal that was inaugurated in April of 2020.
Yeah.
And it was the first, semi-inaugurated, I should say. Let me correct myself. But anyway, with that being said, that was the first new terminal being added into a U.S. port since 2009. And then, of course, right in the midst of the pandemic, and, there were delays and the cranes, et cetera. And then, of course, there was other issues that kind of refrained us from going out full force at 100%. But right now, I think we're at 62%, give or take,
capacity
utilization, which is great.
Okay.
And the Port of Charleston also recently started a new program called the Smart Pool. They launched that new program, and it's done by Thomas Jones, who also was the former education chair for the CBFFAC. So I have to put a little plug in. And Thomas, I'm so sad that you left the freight forwarding side, but best of luck to you on your new endeavors. And I know you're going to do great things for the port with that new pool. And, that way we are able to keep a really good eye on the pool situation. Equipment is an issue for everyone, every port. Charleston is no different. Warehouse and distribution space, everyone is short. We're I think, don't quote me on the numbers, but several million square feet short of having actual physical distribution space available within a 50-mile radius of the port.
So Sylvia, though, to summarize, warts and all, challenges and all, Charleston can handle your freight, whether you're a primary option, a backup option, you name it. Soon it's going to be, as we were talking pre-show, soon it'll be the deepest port in the East Coast, which is cool. So let's really quick. I want to shift gears for a moment. And Josh says Charleston has been amazing to work through. Some of the equipment I get out of Germany was a real lifesaver. Well, Josh, that is a great segue because Sylvia has deep connections and network in Germany. And Greg, we're a bit familiar with what's going on in the German labor market as of in the last few weeks here. And I'm gonna get both of y'all to weigh in here, but kind of set the table here. According to CNBC, the unions that represent labor at 58 ports and terminals across Germany and the Netherlands, well, they aren't satisfied with the latest offer from management. In particular, the unions want to see higher levels of compensation, increased pay due to inflation. There appears, unfortunately, to be an impasse of sorts. And as we all know, that will certainly add more supply chain consternation globally the longer that it goes on. And of course, again, this is from CNBC. So with that kind of just teeing things up, Sylvia, let's start with you. What's going on there in Germany, and how soon before you think we're going to see some relief?
That's a loaded gun question. I will answer that to the best of my ability. Currently, the environment, we just had the 6th round of negotiations fail with no result.
Wow.
Verdi, which is VER.DI, the German labor union for service worker and port-related workers, and it encompasses all of the service industry, really and truly. They have 12,000 members that are working in port-related and terminal operating facilities, which is 58 of them altogether. Then there is their Zentralverband Deutscher Seehäfen, which is the central organization for all seaport and terminal operators in Germany. And the sixth round of negotiation, the union asked for a 14% increase over 1 year, and the terminal operators counteroffered with 12.4% over a 2-year time span.
Okay.
The union rejected that offer, and now they are calling for mediation. However, the union states, we're within our union rules, and again, the German union rules are a little bit different than in the U.S. Let me just state that beforehand. And they are saying we don't really want to have a mediation at this point because we're still in the proper chain of negotiation. So they're rejecting the suggestion of having a mediation meeting with that. So talking to my dad this morning, which of course is my main source of information still to this day, he is retired merchant marine. And he is still listening to the news and very much in tune, as my grandfather, my father's father, was actually one of the founding members of one of the huge labor unions in Germany.
Wow.
Yes. And so we are historically a union family, but of course you try to be as objective as possible. And, my father even said it's going to be a hot summer in more ways than one, because he anticipates, and it is over the German news media, that additional warn strikes. There already have been 2 warn strikes. The first one was the third shift. The second one was a 24-hour warn strike. So there is anticipation of additional warn strikes because there doesn't seem to be a meeting of the mind. It appears to be so close, but fundamentally there are just some real large objections from the union membership, because they say inflation is through the roof. And I mean, officially, it says, I think it's 9.7%.
Wow.
However, unofficially, the numbers are somewhere between 15 and 19%. People are feeling the pain at the pump. They're feeling the pain when they're going into the grocery stores. And then coupled, of course, with the Ukraine-Russian conflict,
right,
gas and oil is going to be pretty much shut off.
Yes.
Coming up.
And the last point, and Greg, I want to get you to weigh in here. And there's been lots the energy leadership across Germany and other European countries. They're ringing the bell. Hey, we've got some right now. Sure, there's shortages, but man, where we're headed, it's gonna fall off a cliff in terms of supply. Greg, weigh in on what we're seeing. As Sylvia was kind of giving us the. She's not presenting it as an insider's take, but she's got some great sources, as she mentioned. Greg, your take.
Yeah. Well, let me open with, I know nothing about German labor laws and the like. I do know this. I know a lot about German culture, and I can tell you that if they are thinking of, this isn't like France or Spain or Italy, they don't strike because they got mad one day or they have to work on a Thursday or work a full 8-hour day. I mean, it must be a very serious situation if German workers are considering striking. And the numbers, underlying numbers, some of us here in the States know that our CPI is coming out today. It's probably going to be hit at about 8.8%. If you measure that the way they used to measure inflation, just 20, 30 years ago, it's much, much higher than that, in the 16 to 19% range, just like Sylvia said, in Germany. So the real effect on workers is much, much greater than being represented. And yet a lot of these companies and ports and whatnot, they see the end of this demand boom coming, right? And the inevitability of recession coming globally. We're not just talking about a U.S. or European recession. We're talking about the inevitability of it all over the world. So they're trying to balance giving additional pay, which I mean, I'm sure, I don't know how fair this usually is, but they're trying to balance that with the coming downturn of demand for just about everything as prices continue to go higher. And yet it's hitting, it's hitting workers at a higher level than people perceive. So it's a very, very delicate balancing act here. So, the only thing I can say is, as long as they keep moving forward, and my experience has been that they do typically negotiate in good faith in Germany and the Netherlands. As long as they keep moving forward, they'll get to some point that will at least release the pressure on workers. But Hamburg is an enormous port, just Hamburg, right? You think of the other ports in the Netherlands, Rothenburg, and elsewhere. They are enormous ports. And if either or any of just those two were to come to a halt or even a significant slowdown, it would have a dramatic impact on the import of goods. And think about this, gang, because the natural gas and fuel and also some grain supplies are not coming from Russia or won't be coming in the same volume. That's being imported through those ports. So there are a lot of lingering and laggard effects that will be impacted by any kind of slowdown or disruption in those ports. It's frightening a little bit to as to what the result could be, but I don't know. For some reason, I just always feel better about those kind of negotiations and that kind of business in Germany, which is clearly the most stable economy in Europe by a far piece. And the other thing you have to recognize is Germany does support a lot of the less viable economies on the European continent as well, those being France and Spain and Italy and others that are not able to stand on their own and experiencing incredible inflation themselves. So,
all right. So that's quite a picture both of y'all are painting. Sylvia, I want to give you, it's tough to dive much deeper in a 10-minute or so segment. But Sylvia, I'm gonna give you the last word, and then we want to make sure folks know how to connect with the one and only Sylvia Judy. So last word on the situation there in Germany.
I would recommend everyone just to have your supply chain proactively planned out. Look for alternative methods of transportation. We at Jazz, we offer a variety of different alternatives. And of course, feel free to contact me. The way to get in touch with me is, of course, through LinkedIn, Sylvia Judy. I think it might even be under Sylvia Mueller Judy, because I think there was another Sylvia Judy, believe it or not, and I didn't think it was possible. I know there's other Sylvia Muellers, but Sylvia Mueller Judy, that's it. That's a surefire way to find me. Wow. And, anyone interested in the Charleston or South Carolina industry, please look us up on the Customs Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association of Charleston. We have a new website. It's cbffac.com.
Okay.
And you will find the membership application. And I would love to welcome the opportunity to welcome new companies. May it be in the transportation side, may it be in the customs brokerage side, freight forwarding, logistics, OTI. We are always looking for new members. We're looking for new talent, and keep that in mind and keep on rolling. I mean, the world will not stop. We're still doing the same thing in transportation as we did during the days of Christopher Columbus. So keep that freight moving.
So really quick, I want to take, so we try to make it easy to get connect with Sylvia Judy, folks. We dropped LinkedIn direct link there in the comments. You don't want to miss the opportunity to connect with Sylvia. And by the way, we also want to take this opportunity, Greg, you and I have chatted about it, but Sylvia is not only a wonderful ambassador for all things Charleston, but she is a big advocate for our veterans. There's been several times when folks are reaching out to us and they want to get plugged in, want to kind of figure out the Charleston ecosystem and network community and all. Sylvia brings them under her wings in a meaningful way. It's deeds, not words. Yeah. And Sylvia, that means a ton to us here. And just want to thank you publicly for what you do in that regard.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you. I'm so humbled, and I so appreciate the opportunity to be of assistance. I've never been in the military, but I'm honors galore.
Mm. Well, we appreciate that. It takes advocates, whether you've served or haven't served. The job is too big to rely only on veterans. So I really appreciate what you do and love what you've dropped on us here. And in the last 25 minutes or so, we're going to have you back. But Greg, your final word with Sylvia before we start to wrap.
Just a sign of her kindness. I think I said Rothenburg, not Rotterdam, but that's that's the port that I was referring to. So thanks for not correcting me there, Sylvia. But I mean, I think the important thing is that Sylvia has eyes on all aspects of this, not just her business. So many of us, it's so easy to be absorbed in our business, but working with this Freight Forwarders Association group, keeping eyes on both Germany and Charleston, I think that's a unique perspective, and all the trade lanes in between there. I think it's a unique perspective that you have, Sylvia, and I appreciate you sharing it so freely, in the comments whenever you're on the show or here, as you've joined us today. So thanks for keeping our eyes open to all that.
That's right. Finger on the pulse. Big thanks, Sylvia Judy with JAS Forwarding, but also with the Sylvia, the association that is the Customs Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association of Charleston, South Carolina. So appreciate your leadership there. That's right.
CBFFAC.com.
But Sylvia, hey, we will see you again soon. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you. Good to see y'all.
Thanks, Sylvia.
All right, man, she is a dynamo. I'll tell you. Love it. Let's see. Kim Winter. Speaking of Kim Winter, great to see you. The one and only. Man, can you imagine getting Sylvia Judy and Kim Winter together? Man, the stars would. Yeah, we should do that.
We should do that. Yeah.
Kim says, greetings from the Dubai team, just back from Rotterdam, Europe's biggest port. 100,000 inland waterway vessel visits annually. Goodness. 30,000 ocean vessels blockages are starting. That is not good news, Kim. But hey, hope this finds you and your team well, though. Josh says Germany got saddled with the loss to the EU from Brexit. Add that to the stance they're taking while more than 60% of their power imports from Russia. Show the amount of responsibility and risk the workforce in Germany is dealing with. Excellent point there.
Well,
Josh.
They were a huge pedestal for the continental portion of Europe to lean on even before Brexit. But yeah, that put an incredible amount of additional pressure on them.
All right. So big thing, y'all. Make sure y'all connect with Sylvia Judy. She's I'll tell you, she's one of a kind. All right. So Greg, we've got a big week of programming. Of course, we had the buzz here today, and Sylvia, we've got rate links tomorrow, Tuesday at 12 noon, talking about diversifying your transportation, your carrier, beyond the big two, as they called it. Thursday, we've got Netstock, really talking about using technology to help maintain and optimize the work-life balance and, frankly, to recruit and retain top talent. Thursday at 12 noon. But tomorrow, Wednesday, Greg. Wednesday, we've got one of the bigger movers and shakers across global business, global supply chain, Rick Mcdonald, the Chief Supply Chain Officer with the Clorox Company, joining us at 12 noon on Wednesday. What are you most excited about here?
Well, I mean, he's one of the premier leaders in supply chain. I mean, we've had him on the show a couple times before, and just what was really inspiring and still strikes me is his leadership ability and his company's viewpoint on putting people first and enabling them, and just the constant, I don't know, it's just kind of a natural leadership mentality that he has. And that's different than managing, right? It's nurturing people, it's positioning people for success. We just in talking to him in the last week, we've seen the number of examples of that. And I think you'll learn a lot about that, plus about some of the innovation that Clorox had to do. Hey, look, nobody came through the great toilet paper shortage of 2020 without any
Unscathed.
dings.
Right.
Right. Yeah, without any dings, but they were active and responsive and effective in kind of reestablishing balance in their supply chain. And I think we're going to get to hear a little bit about that story as well.
I agree with you. And as I shared, I think yesterday on social, we've had the opportunity of talking with and interviewing, having some behind the scene conversations, having plant tours of the Clorox company. I've got caught over the last 5 or 6 years, and goodness gracious, you can see it in all of those interactions, that culture. Rick shared with us, just to navigate through the crazy times in the last couple of years, kind of 3 hallmarks they've really embraced. People are at the center of all that we do the right thing, and play to win. And we see that time and time again. So folks, you're not going to want to miss this conversation, this live conversation on Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern time, with the Clorox Company's Rick Mcdonald. So join us, bring your questions, bring your observations. And I think, of course, we're partial. Don't take our word for it. We've had, as Greg mentioned, we've interviewed Rick several times, but I think you'll walk away with a whole new different appreciation for what the Clorox Company and their team has done in recent years. Okay, Greg, first off, again, happy birthday to Mitch White in Indianapolis.
Yes. Mitchell David.
Mitchell.
Yeah. If anyone wants his social security number, I've got it as well.
Love it. Mitchell David White. Okay. Big thanks to Sylvia Judy, who joined us here today. A dynamo. We just can't cover enough ground. We need like a 6-hour conversation when we talk with Sylvia and all the things going on there. But I love how she weighed in, and some of that family supply chain history she shared, Greg. Big thanks to our production team on the money today, Catherine, Chantel, and Amanda. Hey, make sure T-Squared, make sure you reach out, right? We're going to make a wrong a right. We've been trying for a long time. Shoot Catherine a note, and we're going to make sure we get your prize headed over to you soon. Greg, your last comment before we sign off here today.
It's a tumultuous world right now, but look, I think the thing that you have to recognize if you're a supply chain professional is that this is the world we often live in. The only difference for anyone who's not already a supply chain practitioner is about it now. It used to be we operated kind of behind the scenes, in darkness, in kind of this black box area that nobody really understood, performing unnatural acts and weird magic. But now, because there's so much transparency in the world, and again, since the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, so much awareness of consumers, I want everyone to understand this is not a distinctively more complex world than supply chain has been managing over the past 20, 30, 40 years. It is only more open and viewable by the rest of the world. So
that's right.
There's no need to panic. Supply chain professionals got this. There will be disruptions. There always have been. It's just that we're coming off of the largest singular and most global disruption ever. And it's going to take some time to get stability back in supply chain.
To get it right. Hey, the good news, folks, the good news is you've got wonderful leaders out there like Rick Mcdonald, like Sylvia Judy, like Kim Winter, and beyond that are helping us all navigate through these times. So we're going to leave it there today. Big thanks to Greg White and the whole team here. Greg, always a pleasure to have conversations with you on like over the last hour. But folks, hey, take a page from these folks' book here. Scott Luton challenging you to whatever you do. First off, don't panic, don't fear, but rather do good to get forward and be the change that's needed. Be like Sylvia Judy. And with that said, we'll see you next time right back here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.